Derby. Kentucky Derby.
Now they move around the turn. The leader, War Admiral, 2.5.
Secretary is in the center of the racetrack. The Admiral Moon flying alongside again.
War Admiral is still there. War Admiral is pulling away from another gear. Yeah, the quick fight coming the Derby. Wheel away, King's coming. Flying hot is all hot. Smarty Jones is all out. And here's the first undefeated winner of the Kentucky Derby. Let's see how slow 1970.
It is Monday of Kentucky Derby week, and the backstretch buzz continues to get louder and louder and louder. Rapidly approaching Kentucky Derby 144, presented by Woodford Reserve. And it's time for the Kentucky Derby Work Show, presented by TwinSpires.com. Joe Christopher alongside Scott Shapiro. And Scott, we walked in this morning. There are a lot more people back here, a lot of television cameras, a lot of reporters. And as I said, the buzz continues to get louder.
Yeah, you could feel the buzz. Noticeable difference from when I arrived here last week, Joe. A lot of media outlets, even coffee and donuts for us. You can see something big is about to happen. We're
going to bring in the third and fourth members of our team to talk about what's going to happen today and why it's important. We've got James Scully and Brandon Stauble high atop Churchill Downs near the finish line. Scott and I here on the backstretch. Guys, good morning.
Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Brandon, we have 7 horses arriving today, including 2 of the top favorites, Justify and Mendelssohn. And those horses have already recorded their final workout. Can you explain for our audience the importance of their morning exercises and gallops over the track in the days leading up to the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, the heavy lifting's been done here, guys, and the horses are still going to come in. They still have to do a little bit of work leading up to the race, but these gallops, these jogs, they're important. They're going to tout themselves to us. Certain ones will, certain ones won't, so it's important, James, that we see these.
All right, back to you, Joe.
And we do have one workout today, guys. It is Combatant for trainer Steve Asmussen, set to work during the Derby and Oaks training time, the exclusive time between 7:30 and 7:45 Eastern Daylight Time. Let's take a look at the headlines. Likely Derby favorites arriving, as Brandon and James alluded to. More on that in just a moment. Hofberg logged his final Kentucky Derby breeze yesterday, and he did so in company, 48.20 for that. Blame has been declared out of the Kentucky Oaks with a minor injury. It was unspecified. Exuberance gets in. She was 4th last out in the Santa Anita Derby. Red Ruby also officially out. Heaven Has My Nikki now 15th on the Kentucky Oaks leaderboard. Mentioned the Derby favorites, likely favorites, scheduled to arrive today. Scott, let's take a look at the list of names. Still a lot of horses that we haven't seen yet that we're looking very forward to seeing, including Justify and Mendelssohn.
Yeah, it's exciting. We've got to see a number of the horses, the Pletchers, a number of them have been on grounds, but strong list of horses arriving today, led by, as you mentioned, Justify from California, Boltioro, and of course Mendelssohn will be arriving later today from Europe.
Tice from Florida, Friends Fire from New York, so they're coming from both coasts for the Kentucky Derby. And also mention the fact that we had a final major workout yesterday for one of the upside horses, a horse that's on a lot of people's lists as a potential 20-1 winner, and that's Hofberg. Let's send it to Brandon for his thoughts on this Breeze and Company. Brandon?
Yeah, Hofberg worked very strong yesterday. I thought he was one of the better works that I've seen out here. We talk about horses touting themselves, just the way he looks out there, especially when they did the jog before the gallop. You could see him coming down the lane just full of energy. And but what you also like to see, too, is him relax a little bit. Easily disposed of the work made here. You can see 24-3 to the quarter pole, and then lets his legs stretch out a little bit down the lane. Rider's got a strong hold. The ears are up. And I thought this was a very good move. It was, like I said, it was one of the better moves that I've seen out here. And he's going to do a little something past the wire, too. Typical Bill Mott, sometimes they won't do a lot past the wire. So it was nice to see Hofberg get a little nudge here at the wire and then gallop out pretty strong. Official time for the gallop out 101-1 and 6 furlongs and 114-4.
All right, and as I mentioned, Combatant supposed to work today. We will have that live for you here on the Kentucky Derby Work Show presented by TwinSpires.com. Mentioned a little bit of a shakeup, Scott, in the Oaks field. We had a defection. That means we have an addition as well. So let's take a look at the 14 as it stands. As I mentioned, Heaven Hands by Nikki is now number 15. She's on the outside looking in. Exuberance draws in, but the top two here on the points list are also the top two names for the Kentucky Oaks.
Yeah, it looks to me like, in some ways you can make this into a two-horse race, Joe. You have Maname Girl, and then you have Midnight Bisou coming in from California. Very impressed with what she's done for trainer Bill Spar. Really looking forward to seeing how she handles things here at Churchill.
And we're really looking forward to the draw as well. 10:45. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, KentuckyDerby.com/works, you can watch the Kentucky Oaks draw live. Show starts at 10:45 a.m. We're going to have a production for you. Looking very forward to seeing that field of 14. James, let's send it up to you. It's a field of 14, 20 for the Derby, but this draw is still very important for quite a few of the combatants in the race.
Yeah, definitely. Not as extreme with the 6 fewer horses in the Kentucky Derby starting gate, but the Oaks, for me, it's more important for horses that have speed, tactical speed, not be drawn far outside in the Kentucky Oaks field. If it's a late runner like Midnight Bisou or Eskimo Kisses, the post won't be as important. Abel Tasman broke from post 13 last year and won the Kentucky Oaks from off the pace. But in regards to Monomoy Girl, who's going to be either the favorite or second choice, she definitely doesn't want to be out in like 11, 12, 13, or 14. So an inside post for her and any other horses that are going to show speed or tactical speed is more important than outside. Joe.
All right, thanks, James. We have the Oaks arrivals today, and we mentioned Justify, Mendelssohn, etc. for the Derby. Midnight Bisou, we've been watching Monomoy Girl train here for the better part of the last 2 weeks. We haven't seen Midnight Bisou, another arrival that everybody's looking forward to, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill Spar horses, not those that work super impressively in the mornings, speaking to experts, but the horse has done very little wrong on the track. Also, Bob Baffert sending Raya. Looking forward to seeing how they look, Joe.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Raya, too. She's a little bit of a mystery horse that's flying under the radar for Baffert, so looking forward to her appearance on the track as well. Social media questions, keep firing them in. If you've got a question, I don't care how simple, how complex, send it to us via social media. We will be answering as many as possible. We have viewers from all over the country, all over the world. Randy from Wyoming, Donna from Washington, D.C., Jody from Australia, just a few of the many thousands watching the Kentucky Derby Work Show via social media. Send us those questions. When we return here on the Kentucky Derby Work Show, we will be joined by the voice of Churchill Downs, track announcer Travis Stone, right after this.
Feel the excitement with TwinSpires.com, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby and Breeders' Cup. With TwinSpires.com, place legal wagers and watch live horse racing wherever you are on any device. Sign up, play, and win today. New players use promo code WIN100 on sign up to start your $100 bonus. With TwinSpires.com, you can bet the Kentucky Derby. Get the TwinSpires.com app to receive special offers and the most up-to-date information. Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Please wager responsibly.
Where the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the fields are all in bloom, and the bird music all the day.
Today, we share the best of Kentucky. It's our Woodford way.
I'm here at Churchill Downs. I am hanging out with somebody that's extremely important to Churchill Downs. I am putting the face with the famous voice that you all hear. He is the track announcer. It is Travis Stone. Travis Stone, it's a pleasure to meet you. The man who puts it all down, calls the race, and you do such a fabulous job with it. What goes into preparing for a job like this?
Well, calling me famous, that's very nice of you to do. I'm not quite famous yet, but it's great to be here. Churchill Downs, home of the Derby, can't beat it. Racing is the same day in and day out. You take the jockey's silks that they're wearing and you memorize them to their name, and you hope that during the race when you're watching through your binoculars, you don't have to look down and you can memorize and call the name when you need it. Horse racing is very fast-paced. high intensity. So you have to keep your eyes on the horses. That's why we memorize the horses' names to their silk, so we don't have to look down or look away. We can make sure we catch everything and announce it so people can hear what's going on.
Now, if there's any race out there in history that you could ever announce, which one would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. It would be pretty cool to call Secretariat's Belmont Stakes.
A little bit of insight into track announcer Travis Stone there. We thank Armand Newton for that piece. Travis, welcome. It's Kentucky Derby week. You and I came in together in 2015. You don't really get much of a warm-up period, man. It's right into the fire, and then all of a sudden in 2015, you're calling your first Kentucky Derby. We saw right there how you prepare, but 20 horses and a Kentucky Derby, a whole different animal.
Not only is it the biggest race in the world and it's most exciting 2 minutes in sports, as they say, it's also a very challenging race to call because of all the horses. When you call races day in and day out, 8, 9, 10 horses a race, you get used to that. And then when 20 go thundering by you and you can hear the crowd of 170,000 screaming in the background, it's a rather unnerving experience.
And every horse that's in the race needs a call because you've got owners, trainers, bettors. Like, they want to know where the horse is, so you got to get through all 20 of them.
Yeah, my objective, once they hit the 8th pole first time around, is to get through the entire field in what I call the rundown. And you just got to commit to it. You get to the 14th horse, you start to panic because it's like, oh, they're already on the the clubhouse turn, they're going to the backstretch, keep going. By the time you get to the 20th, it's a big sigh of relief, and then you call a horse race for the last 5. But yeah, the objective is everybody get mentioned at least once.
Travis, retracing your steps, obviously calling the Kentucky Derby, huge achievement. But is there a particular moment in time as a child or as a young adult where you were like, I want to be a race caller?
I get asked that question a lot, and I never know what the right answer is, because I grew up in upstate New York, so we used to go to Saratoga all the time. My dad was a police officer in New York, would take 2 weeks vacation or whatever it was every summer. So we went every day for, as much as we could. And I would always come home and just play horse racing. I'd ride my bike pretending I was a jockey. I used to race matchbox cars and call the race. And so it just sort of evolved naturally and organically. There was never a moment like, this is what I want to do. I just sort of remember always wanting to do it. And 1996, I wrote a letter to Tom Durkin, who's the race caller in New York at the time. And I said, hey, I want to be a race caller. What do I do? He wrote me back. I still have that letter. And fast forward, I guess, like 22 years later, here we are.
If you have a question for Travis Stone on social media, obviously has a very unique job. There's only a couple of dozen people, in the country and the world that actually do what he does. Extremely unique. Send it through social media if you've got a question for Travis. Travis, you call hundreds of races a year. Once the race is over, you can pretty much just pitch it. It's done. It's over with. But the Kentucky Derby is different in that race call will exist for the remainder of time. I'm talking 50 years from now. People are going to go back and watch Kentucky Derbies from years past, and it's going to be your voice. How do you absorb that, and what do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate you helping me stay calm. I mean, 50, 100. So the Derby, you're right. We had, 10 races Saturday night, opening night here at Churchill, sort of get into the groove a little bit. But between races, I was working on the Derby call. It's by far the one call you spend the most time preparing for. I've watched every horse's replay. I've dived deep. And the other day I picked up pictures of each horse so I could find the markings on their face or distinguishing features to help separate them should the time come in the race, where I need to sort of call upon the fact that Justify's face is a little bit white. And it's a deep, deep dive into the race, and you hope that all the things you think about and prepare for and come up with, that when the time comes in the race call, you bust them out, and you just can't wait for them to cross the wire and it'll all be done.
Travis, along with calling races, you're obviously a very astute handicapper, analyst. Do you use any of those same skills when you're calling a race, or is it a total separate animal? To
be honest with you, I do enjoy handicapping. It is by far one of the best parts about my preparation for race calling is that I actually apply everything I know about handicapping. So, for example, in this year's Derby, the pace, it looks pretty clear. Promises Fulfilled is going to go to the front. And so because I handicap the races and I can understand how races shake out, and there's some race shape and race flow, I know, okay, I need to be ready for when Justify makes a move on the far turn, right, like he did at Santa Anita. Or I have to be ready for, what if Promises Fulfilled turns for home and he's got a 2-length lead because nobody went with him and he got away with a slow pace, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this big long shot might wire the Kentucky Derby. All those various scenarios that could happen as the result of handicapping the race. That's what I did. I don't bet it, though. It's unfortunate because it's the best race every year to bet. There's big payoffs, but I don't bet the races I call.
Travis, we got a ton of people on Facebook that are probably tired of listening to me and Ed and Scott and James and Brandon talk about who we like. A lot of people on Facebook want to know who you like in the Kentucky Derby. Why don't you give us a clue?
Yeah, so I think it's not a creative opinion at all. I think if Justify runs his race, I think he's by far the horse to beat. What could bury Justify as a potential winner of this race is if he draws a bad post or something goofy happens, like a suicidal pace stool. He's unsettled and he gets stuck going too fast early. I think Justify is very much so the horse to beat. If I had to pick some other potential horses to pick alongside of Justify, there's just, I mean, look, he's such a good mover too. He almost has that American Pharoah-like look to him. He just seems to get over the ground so smoothly and so easily, covers a lot of ground with each and every stride. You know, if Mike Smith, if you ever watch Mike Smith ride, I think one of the best things about Mike is he gets into a nice rhythm with his hands on the horse's neck, and he did it when he rode him all three starts out at Santa Anita. If they find that rhythm in the Derby, they're going to be very tough. But there's 19 other horses going against him. I think Audible is coming into the race in good form. I think, and he's very tractable, or he can sort of pull back way off the pace and make a big closing move if he needs to. And then a live long shot, who's a little bit under the radar in my opinion, is Noble Indy for Todd Pletcher, his other entrant. Who, one of the funny things about this year's Derby is everybody's coming into it having enjoyed pretty soft setups, whether it be pace setups or soft trips without much trouble. Noble Indy did. He was against a real fast pace down in New Orleans and fought on till the end. He's developing a lightly raced horse, still on the way up. I think he's a live long shot.
Todd Pletcher would agree with you when we were back at the barn. He's like, Noble Indy's flying under the radar.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people, Travis, are looking for that horse, kind of a commanding curve type to come from off the pace. Is there anybody for an underneath spot, maybe not on the win end? Is there anybody that you look for that? Maybe a My Boy Jack, Lone Sailor type?
Yeah, Lone Sailor, I think, is the live long shot underneath. That's the way, when I do bet the race, that's the way I like to play. I like to find a long shot closer to, sneak into the trifecta or the superfecta. That Lone Sailor, I don't think he moved too early, but if he's allowed to settle a little bit more this time around and make that one late run, I think he's very interesting. And the horse today that we're going to see, Combatant, the only thing about Combatant is I don't like how he's made this big move on the far turn in all of his races, and then at the eighth pull it sort of stops, right? So I don't know if he is more of a one-turn horse or probably wants to go a little bit shorter, but he's also alive to round out the super high five. And I mean, if you can get the super high five in the Derby, you can go ahead and retire tomorrow,
We got a lot of questions on Facebook, actually, and people commenting about race calling in general. And they want to know if you ever get tongue-tied, and if you do, and you just have a brain cramp, like how do you overcome that and recapture the essence of the race?
Well, hopefully it doesn't happen in the Derby, but, to be honest with you, on a given day, like even on Saturday night, I'll get tongue-tied once or twice. A lot of times people can't notice it. Sometimes it's pretty noticeable. You just got to put it behind you and keep going. It happens. It's part of the job. And it's unfortunate when it does. I mean, I do have on my wall in the booth some tongue twister exercises to do when I get there each morning or each afternoon, whatever it is. And I use those to hopefully warm up a little bit. But as you know, flub ups are part of it. Yeah.
As I know.
As you know.
If you talk,
sorry, I didn't mean that was for the 50 years Derby comment.
If you talk as much as we do, it's impossible for everything that comes out of your mouth to be perfect. Keep asking those questions on social media for Travis, not only about his job, but about maybe horses he likes. We're going to get his opinions during the course of the next half hour or so. Scott, any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, the first Derby experience, tongue-tied, was there anything that you recall specifically? Obviously, we remember things that we do for the first time. Did you have a moment, or did you feel like the first one went real good with the American Pharoah experience?
I am extremely proud of my first Derby call because obviously I had never been to the Kentucky Derby. I had never been to Churchill Downs Derby Week, and so not only was I going to have to call the race, I was here for the first time experiencing everything. I'm proud of it, though. I put a lot of work into it. And it was just one of those moments that, if you ask, anybody that does some sort of creative endeavor or maybe even an athletic endeavor, I just happened to be in the zone that day. And it was, and the horses helped too, because as far as derbies go, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, the three horses up front didn't really change much position. There wasn't a lot of movement from the back. So it was fun. I remember when they crossed the wire, it's like this huge, overwhelming sense of excitement and relief.
Before you became the track announcer at Churchill Downs, you were the track announcer at various other tracks. But I want to kind of know, even growing up, how did you enjoy Derby Day? Did you come to Churchill Downs at all for any derbies just as a fan? Did you throw parties? There's a lot of fans out there that are like, what am I going to do for Derby Day? How can I best enjoy it? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, so I've never enjoyed Derby aside from being a race caller. 2015 was the first time I came to the Kentucky Derby. When I was young, growing up, we did a bunch of different things. We had some family over for small Derby parties. I remember one Kentucky Derby when I was going through my confirmation classes. I had a particular religious education teacher that did not like me. I didn't like her either, and she purposely scheduled a ceremony during one of the derbies. So I missed one derby because of her, and I hope she's watching. She's not, but and then just I remember being so excited all week long, tuning into whatever you could tune into in the mornings to watch some of the preview shows and just blocking out the afternoons and, not going anywhere. It was Derby Day. I was going to sit down and watch the whole broadcast, and that's what I remember most. If you're coming to the Derby, each year I try and get a friend or two to come and experience it for the first time. Nobody's ever had a bad time. It's truly one of the greatest days of the year. You just got to do it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to enjoy Derby, and we have some options for you. If you're planning to watch the Kentucky Derby from home, visit KentuckyDerbyParty.com for information on where to watch, betting tips, recipes, and a chance to win a trip to next year's Derby. Again, that is KentuckyDerbyParty.com. We'll be back with live training for the Oaks and Derby horses here on the Kentucky Derby Work Show, presented by TwinSpires.com, right after this.
Feel the excitement with TwinSpires.com, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby and Breeders' Cup. With TwinSpires.com, place legal wagers and watch live horse racing wherever you are on any device. Sign up, play, and win today. New players use promo code WIN100 on sign up to start your $100 bonus. With TwinSpires.com, you can bet the Kentucky Derby. Get the TwinSpires.com app to receive special offers and the most up-to-date information. Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Please wager responsibly.
Where the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the fields are all in bloom, and the bird music all the day.
Today, we share the best of Kentucky. It's our Woodford way.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby Work Show presented by TwinSpires.com. Temperature in the low 40s, but on the rise. Main track is fast. Under sunny skies, under the Twin Spires at Churchill Downs. Again, we're going to see a lot of gallopers here today. There'll be lots of activity on the racetrack. We've got one worker scheduled in Combatant. Let's send it back up to James Scully and Brandon Staubel for a little bit more on Combatant and what you guys expect to see today from some of the gallopers out there, guys.
Yeah, Joe, Combatant was on the AE list to start the 2 weeks ago, but he got a defection that enabled him to draw in the field, and he'll record the last work here on track in advance of the Kentucky Derby. He's trained by Steve Asmussen, Brandon. Steve Asmussen likes to work his horses on Monday. Just tell us a little bit about what you think Steve will be looking for.
Yeah, we've talked about this before on the show, but all trainers have different routines. They have different things they like to do. This barn, Steve Asmussen's barn, typically will have a serious move 2 weeks out, and then going into that last work, it's a very slow half-mile move. He worked a couple this morning. They went a little quicker than usual, 48, 49. So we could probably see something in the 49 to 50 range, James, but don't be worried about the time in here. It's just something easy into the race. You'll actually sometimes even catch the riders checking their watch down the lane because they don't want to go too quick. They don't want to go back to the barn and not follow instructions in here, James. So Combatant's very interesting to me. When Travis mentioned earlier about making that move, well, Combatant has faced slow paces in most of the races at Oaklawn Park this year, and for whatever reason they were very slow. Magnum Moon set slow paces with Quip, and Combatant makes his move into a slow pace. So James, do you think he can, with a little more pace, can be right there at the wire?
Yeah, there's definitely a chance, and he broke his maiden here at Churchill Downs, so he's run well here over the track before. Definitely going to be one of those late runners to consider, like Travis said, for the tries or supers, and really looking forward to seeing how he gallops out as well, because we're expecting him to go pretty easy in the stretch. Can you talk about the gallop out and the work?
Yeah, it's very important, depending depending on what the work is. We talked about today. I'm not expecting to see a big gallop out today from Combatant, but previous drills, yes, we're galloping out a little more, and it all just depends on the trainer. But you do like to see when you're going this distance that you get a nice gallop out, you get some bottom, you open up the lungs a little bit.
All right, great. Back to you, Joe.
All right, thanks, guys. The Derby and Oaks designated time for workers is 7:30 to 7:45 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time. That's coming up in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. Travis, I want to ask you a question. You get to see horses move all the time when you're calling the race in the binoculars, and you're going to get to see horses move from a little bit different perspective here, watching them train. How horses move? I mean, how important is that to you in the whole handicapping process?
You know, it's interesting. I don't pretend to know. I never grew up with horses. Last time I rode a horse was probably a pony at the circus. So I don't have a cute, intense understanding of horses. But when you call races and like when you handicap races like we do, you start to learn what you're looking at a little bit, and you see what you want to see. And horses like Justify, you can just tell when you watch his stride, it's efficient. He covers the ground well. He's always sort of in a very athletic type look. And then you can also see when a horse is not particularly athletic or not working well. They just look like a human does, tired or a little bit off the muscle, so to speak. So I look at it quite a bit, especially for races like the Kentucky Derby, because you can pick up distinctive features of how a horse. Monomoy Girl, for example, in the Oaks, she runs with a very high head carriage. So that's something, you know, if she's stuck between horses and I can't make out the silks, but I see a high head carriage, it's probably her. Those types of things. I want to ask Brandon a question, if we can go back to him real quick. I've got a question on social media from Josh on Facebook. He wants to know how Rhea's race in Maidan against Mendelssohn stacks up. And I got a text from Brandon the other day saying that he watched Rhea's works in California. And Brandon, you were impressed. So are you really looking forward to seeing her the remainder of this week?
Yeah, I am, definitely. And it's very interesting that she appears to have a lot of tactical speed. She basically worked heads up with Abel Tasman. And the fact that Mendelssohn in that race at the UAE Derby was able to just draw off from a horse that has so much tactical speed, that impressed me a lot, especially for Mendelssohn. So I can't wait to see the both of them. But it makes Mendelssohn, in my opinion, look a lot better, Joe.
Okay, thanks. I got a question for Scott. I'm going to ask you this one. It's from George on Facebook, and he says, and our producer Keith Wessler probably wants to know the answer to this question as well. Why do horses train so early in the morning? Do horses ever train in the afternoon and the evening? Why are we out here at 6 o'clock in the morning with these horses, Scott?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the timing of the race and there being equal time, enough time in the day to do everything, get started. A lot of these guys also have habits of getting started. I know some of them, Bill Sparr, for instance, back in California, they get started at 4 in the morning. It's amazing, but a lot of it has to do with the scheduling.
Yeah, and Travis, you know, we have races in the afternoon, and there's preparations for the racetrack, too. You got to get the track ready. And horses are on a schedule. They're very scheduled in their routines, like Scott mentioned. And I think it's just, you know, the way things are. There's feed time. There's other things that go on in the backstretch during the course of a day.
I know. I'm thankful that I don't have to train, because if I had to get up at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock every morning, I would never make it. You know, us announcers roll in, I don't know, 11:30 or so, something like that. But, yeah, it's one of those things I understand the scheduling component of it and having to be ready for the races in the afternoon, but it is such a long day for the people that work on the backstretch. I have nothing but respect for them. And we're all friends with trainers and people that work back there. And, you know, they can never stay out late. They can't have a late dinner. They have to go home at 8 o'clock at night. And it's it's not only a commitment to the job, it's a commitment to the lifestyle, and it's hard. I tip my hat to them.
Yeah, not only is it early mornings, but it's every day. There's no time off, you know, and they go, you think, oh, Keeneland just ends. Well, Churchill's ready right the next day.
7 days a week. Brutal.
Yeah, we talked about how much buzz there is on the backstretch here, and I've been walking back here for the better part of the last couple of weeks, and it exploded today. I mean, you've got so many news crews, you've got so many radio remotes, you've got people coming back here that are friends of trainers, and it's just really starting to ramp up. And Travis and Scott, like when Justify gets here today and he gets off that van, what's the over and under and how many camera people are going to be there shooting that?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm 19 and a half.
More than that.
I got the over on that one.
What about bath shots?
I can't wait.
Because he'll get a bath after he travels, and there has to be a bath shot. Everybody takes pictures of horses taking baths and puts them online. I mean,
how much do you use that in your handicapping, though,
bath
Travis?
shots?
Yeah.
Well, you need a good bath shot. If you don't have a good bath shot, you're not going to win the Kentucky Derby. I don't think there's ever been a Derby winner without a bath shot.
Well, one of my favorite things about this week and even last week is you see a Dwayne Lucas, and he's holding court with so many reporters, not only talking about his horse for the Derby and the Kentucky Derby, but just telling stories. And Bob Baffert the same way, and Todd Pletcher's getting like that a little bit too. And Chad Brown's been in such a great mood this week because of how well Good Magic is doing. Talk to me, guys. Scott, we'll start with you, just about the communication with trainers and just the overall feel, not only for what we're seeing this week leading up to the Derby, but this is where every trainer, owner, jockey, this is where they want to be.
Yeah, it's amazing to kind of think about some of the moves these guys have made over their career to get to this moment. Some of them have been here many times, Lucas, Pletcher, Baffert, some of them for maybe the first time. So it's got to be an exciting time for them, and also difficult to deal with their horses and also deal with the media.
All right, the training period has begun. Bravazo, our first horse, one of the stars of the show the last couple of weeks. Let's send it back up to Brandon and James to tell us what they see from high atop Churchill Downs. Guys?
Yeah, we're looking at, like, Bravazo came out with the coach, like you referenced, the Kentucky Derby. Glad to see Dwayne Lucas. His first Derby was 1981. This is his 37th year here, and he's a four-time winner, so he's tied with Bob Baffert's for second all-time. We're going to be watching. Today is a day where yesterday a lot of the horses that had worked on Saturday took the day off, so we're expecting to see all four of Todd Pletcher's horses, as well as Good Magic for Chad Brown, My Boy Jack, and others, and as well as Combatant. He's the main worker today, Joe.
Bravazo finally got a rider named Luis Contreras, who rode Warriors Club, the Churchill Downs Racing Club horse, to a victory at Keeneland, a stakes victory at 23-1 the other day. James, you and I were back at Coach's Barn the other day, and he was talking to us about potential jockeys. Luis Contreras was one of the ones he mentioned. He was very impressed by the ride on Warriors Club, and Luis Contreras riding in his second Kentucky Derby. This is a guy very familiar to Woodbine racing fans.
Yeah, exactly. He gave a really good ride to that Warriors Club. It was an upset winner. Didn't panic when he was stopped in upper stretch. You know, Dwayne Lucas has a long association with Gary Stevens. Stevens rode Thunder Gulch and Winning Colors, Kentucky Derby winners for him. But after the ride in the Louisiana Derby, where something went amiss, and on the far turn, they decided to make a change and get somebody else in the saddle. And like you said, Joe, he's had a good experience here of late with Luis Contreras, and feels confident in his abilities.
Now, Travis, this is a horse that you mentioned you really like in Audible. He's not a great workhorse, but I love the way he attacks the ground. In both of those Florida victories, he just really seems to get solid hold of the racetrack. And like you mentioned, stalker, closer, doesn't matter. I would be surprised if he wasn't finishing with authority.
You know, everybody made a big deal about the workout he had before the Florida Derby, where he was unable to outwork the horse he worked with. I can't remember the name. It was a talented older horse, if I remember correctly. And then he wins the Florida Derby. Then he comes here and works the other day, and he actually outworked his workhorse. So you have to think that Audible is going in the right direction. He's had sufficient time since the Florida Derby. And what I like most about Audible is that he can do whatever he needs to do. He can drop way back. He can be up close. He's got a big shot.
Yeah, he not only makes that move that a lot of Derby makes around the far turn, but he has improved in each and every one of his races, which is something I like to see. And as you mentioned, Travis, he seems to be doing and training better here than he was before his big effort in Florida.
Travis, people make such a big deal about pedigree. He's by Into Mischief. He's a New York bred. But to me, once horses prove what they can do, pedigree pretty much goes out the window.
I know. People get obsessed with the Derby distance and the pedigree and whether or not they have a Kentucky Derby winning pedigree. And I actually tweeted out the other day, and somebody responded with about 75%, I think it was, of derbies are won at the eighth pole. The winner of the Kentucky Derby is in front at the eighth pole. So as long as you can get that 9 furlongs, a lot of times that extra furlong just comes with it. Once they're on the racetrack and you see what they can do, to me, pedigree's out the window.
And right on cue, another horse that you kind of said you liked as an under-the-radar individual, Noble Indy, who was in front at the eighth pole in the Louisiana Derby, but he wasn't in front of the 16th pole, but then he wound up still winning, so he shows some resiliency.
Yeah, he fought right back, and like I was saying before, every other horse in this race, most of them anyway, have enjoyed soft setups in terms of pace and or trip. He did not. He was up close to what was a very fast pace, one of the fastest paces by Louisiana Derby standards we've seen in recent years, and he fought on well to the finish, and he still won. That was his 4th career start. He's been progressing with each and every start, figures-wise. I think he's sitting on a big race, and I also like the projected pace, or I should say the projected trip he projects to get.
Speaking of horses that try really hard, Flameaway fits that category. And James, I know this is a horse that you've been high on, and you've kind of liked his training too. So he hasn't lost any luster as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, definitely a very honest horse. He's going to lay his body down every time. And Travis referenced, being in position at the 8th pole can be very important in the Kentucky Derby. And Flameaway is that kind of horse. Expect him to be sitting like 3rd or 4th in the early going with his speed. And he's made a good impression here in the mornings.
All right, again, the Kentucky Derby horses in the bright yellow saddle towels. The Kentucky Oaks horses are in the pink saddle towels. We're going to try to show you as many of these horses as possible. And right now, this is just a time where they're getting out onto the racetrack. We'll see some gallops. We'll see some jogs. We've already seen a couple of the Todd Pletcher horses out on the racetrack as we take a look at Flameaway here, trained by Mark Casse, who last year had Classic Empire, who finished 4th, but did not have a good trip. It was a situation where maybe the best horse didn't win the Derby last year because he came back and ran huge in the Preakness. But yes, horses are going to be compromised in their trips. And Travis, when you're calling the race, you don't know who is going to be compromised. It doesn't matter what the post is. Once they leave that starting gate, horses are going to get squeezed. Horses are going to get sandwiched. Horses are going to be compromised.
And as Classic Empire is one of the favorites last year. So when they were loading into the gate, I made a note to make sure to look at horses like Classic Empire, and he got completely slammed coming out of the gate. Trips are a big part of the Derby, no two ways about it.
All right, Noble Indy has started a little bit of a more serious exercise move here, jogging, galloping out on the racetrack. Sometimes I have a hard time differentiating between cantering, jogging, and galloping, but I would call this maybe a jog. Scott, your thoughts on Noble Indy? He's going to be forwardly placed. We know the promise is fulfilled. Most likely is going to be the horse on the lead. Justify is going to be up there and pressing. Mendelssohn, there are some horses with a pressing style, and Noble Indy's one of them.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what Travis said, I like that he overcame a less than an ideal voyage in Louisiana and still fought on and won. I like his gameness. And I also like his price. I expect him to get overlooked not only because of the Louisiana Derby being less recent than the other races, but also the jockey games are going to probably prevent him. They're going to look and see Johnny V, Javier Castellano opting for other horses. Noble Indy, I think, might get overlooked in the wagering.
There have been some mixed reviews on Magnum Moon across social media as far as the way he's been training. I want to get Brandon Stauble's thoughts. Obviously, Brandon, he is a physically imposing, beastie individual. What are your thoughts on the way he's trained? I mean, obviously, a little bit distracted in the Arkansas Derby, but he won for fun anyway.
Yeah, and we talked about that with Nyquist a few years ago, the same thing, kind of coming into the race. People were concerned about that. It didn't bother him. I liked that they kept him covered up in the workout, and it was one of those things where you look down at the watch and you see 47 at the wire, and he looks like he's going in 49. So he's checking all the boxes there. He looks great out here galloping. Joe, there's no really knocks that I've seen so far. Yeah, maybe he's going to want to drift out a little bit down the lane, but I think the biggest knock on him is the soft paces he's been setting at Oaklawn Park.
We see Magnum Moon there. Travis, your thoughts on Magnum Moon?
Yeah, he's a tough read for me. I thought after he won the Rebel, really impressive effort in the Rebel. I was like, this is a really nice horse. It's going to be a progressive type heading into the Kentucky Derby. And then in the Arkansas Derby, he sat a really soft trip. The pace was not fast at all. He won like a horse that enjoyed a soft trip, but he's got this thing where he veers out in the stretch, and I don't think he's going to offer the right value. As an undefeated horse, I think they gravitate towards a lot of first-place finishes. Won't be surprised if he runs well and is the type of horse that wins the Kentucky Derby, but off his projected price, he's a horse I'd want to fade from a horse player perspective, but he's going to figure prominently because he has some talent.
A really fun horse this year is My Boy Jack for a lot of different reasons. First of all, he was purchased for $20,000 at auction by Keith DeSormo, who seems to find diamonds in the rough. We had Keith DeSormo on the show a couple of days ago. This is a deep closer, and admittedly, Kent DeSormo may be moving a little bit too soon on him in a couple of races, fell just short in the Risen Star, in the Louisiana Derby, and then he comes back and wins the Lexington. Scott, your perspective on My Boy Jack. We talk about those closers that can sneak a piece of the pie as far as tri-supers, etc. go. This is a really, really nice horse, but is he good enough to make a major impact?
Yeah, like you said, I'm a little concerned with his runs not being sustained. I think it's got to be perfectly timed. But when the DeSormo brothers do well, it's usually good for my wallet. I will be using My Boy Jack heavily underneath.
Exaggerator's a horse that closed from way back.
Yeah.
My Boy Jack is a similar kind of horse. I'm not sure they compare. My Boy Jack has to prove a lot more, Travis. But like I said, a fun horse to watch, a fun horse to call when they come from way out of it like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I wish I could buy something for $20,000 and have it return $645,000 like this horse has. He also comes out of that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, which has proven to be a pretty live race. We saw Beckford win the other day here at Churchill. I think about all subsequent starts out of that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, they've won 50% of them, the group in that ran in that race. So My Boy Jack had some company lines, at least on turf, that fit. That's going to boil down to when Kent DeSormo makes that move. I don't think My Boy Jack, it's fair to compare him to Exaggerator. Exaggerator was better.
Yeah.
My Boy Jack is not quite up to Exaggerator's level, but sometimes the late movers of the Kentucky Derby are able to outrun their odds and their ability a little bit given the pace.
Speaking of late closers, Combatant is on the track. He is supposed to work today. I'm going to send it back up to James and Brandon to kind of talk us through Combatant and his work and what Mr. Steve might be looking for, guys.
Yeah, Brandon, Combatant broke off from the pony coming towards the gap, and just go take us through what he's doing.
Yeah, so like we talked about earlier, we're not expecting anything too serious here. Just the typical barn move is an easy half mile. They're going to have him under a strong hold. You'll see the rider checking the watch probably a few times just to make sure he doesn't go too quick. And he's approaching the half mile pole right now. We'll go ahead and pick him up. There he goes. And, you just want to see something very relaxed, nice and easy. And you might see a little bit of a gallop out, but nothing that you would see maybe 2-3 weeks before this. So he's getting into a nice rhythm here. And like we talked about the years before, you just saw him peek down at the watch. So he's checking the fractions. He doesn't want to go too fast. We talked about the ears, and for everybody out there, it's just getting the horse to relax. When those ears go up, the horse is relaxed, and he's telling you that he can do whatever you want here. We got 24 flat to the quarter pole here. So he's actually moving pretty well. He's got a little bit of that the high knee action, but he's leveling out well down here, and the ears are still up. He's saying, what do you want me to do right now? And just kind of lengthening the stride a little bit in here, and you'll probably see the rider check his watch one more time at the wire, and just try to not go too quick in here. Yep, checked it right there. So 49-2 on my watch, just exactly what the barn wanted, and you're going to see a little bit of a gallop out in here, but Steve's going to be really happy with this move, Joe.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that high knee action that you referenced, Brandon. Is that something that you see more with turf horses that'll handle the grass a little bit better? And I also saw him switch back to his left lead in a little bit of an awkward move right before the finish line there. Your thoughts?
As far as the lead change, he did switch back over to the right lead, so I'm not really looking into that too much. Sometimes they just get a little bored down the lane. He was going so easily, and the ears were up, so that's not going to bother me at all. The high knee action, it's just about the horse itself, and as long as you don't see that, what I like to call like a stair climbing motion, it's all about efficiency, and Travis kind of touched on that earlier. You just want to be as efficient as possible. You want your horses to be good movers, and he moves very well through it. It's just something that, like he said, you can pick out as far as the horses are moving to identify him a little bit, but he moves great and looked good out here, Joe.
Very good. We've got questions continuing to come in from social media. We'll get to some of those. So if you've asked something, just hold tight. We're trying to get to as many social media questions as we can. We've got some time at the end of the training session to do that. Combatant, Brandon, did you get a final time on that move?
Yeah, it was on my watch. It was 49-2.
Yeah, we'll get the official times that Brandon usually matching up pretty closely with those through Derby Media on Twitter. Derby Media will be tweeting those workout times as they have been all the last couple of weeks here at Churchill Downs as soon as it becomes available. There's Free Drop Billy. Travis, Dale Roman's a favorite here in Louisville, one of only 5 trainers with horses in the Derby and Oaks this year. He's got Promises Fulfilled. He's got Free Drop Billy. He's got both bases covered. Of the 2 Romans, and we see Free Drop Billy here, which horse do you think has the better chance to make an impact at the end? We know who's going to make an impact at the beginning.
Yeah, obviously I think the answer to that is Free Drop Billy. I think the question with him is whether or not he truly wants to be a 10-furlong racehorse. He ran in the Hopeful at Saratoga last summer in a group of horses that I believe has turned out to be a pretty quality group of one-turn sprinter types. in all of his races this year, he just hasn't had that same late kick you see going shorter. His workout was spectacular, but he's always been a spectacular workhorse, and he's a very flashy-looking horse. I mean, his face, how can you miss that face? At the end of the day, I think there's enough pace in the race to set up a horse like Free Drop Billy, but I think there are better closers. But he would be the right sort of chance between him and Promises Fulfilled.
We do have that workout time on Combatant, the official time from the clockers upstairs for Equibase. It's 49.60. A lot of questions about the decimals and the fractions. 49.60 is 49 3/5. So if you see 49 3/5 again, that just equates to 49.60. A good math lesson for you guys.
How about this? This is everything on this work show. You guys do a great job.
We got Free Drop Billy in the picture. Scott, we'll go to you on Free Drop Billy. I mean, at this point in time, and we're going to really dive deeper into it after the draw, but we're starting to figure out how we're going to construct our tickets. What horses we're going to put on top, second, third, if we go to a superfecta fourth. And when you're betting the races, it's all about maximizing your budget. Who do you like and how can you maximize the horses that you like? Is Free Drop Billy a horse that you're going to include on any of your tickets prominently or just kind of as an afterthought?
I think he's kind of a C, if you will, maybe more so underneath horse, though, if anything. I've been a little disappointed. I had kind of high hopes for this horse coming into the season. A little bit of an odd path going to the Gotham. Maybe he can pick up the pieces if he can peak on the right day. But my gut tells me he's a cut below these, especially at the classic distance.
It wouldn't be a Kentucky Derby work show if Promises Fulfilled didn't get a little bit of airtime as he exits the track. Our producer, Keith Wetzler, very, very high on Promises Fulfilled going into the Kentucky Derby is a major pace factor. And here's the horse that's going to be chasing him late, My Boy Jack. I want to throw it back up to Brandon and James for your thoughts on My Boy Jack. A great conversation with Keith DeSormo the other day. Man knows how to pick a racehorse for a bargain basement price, $20,000 for this one. You know, that's the great thing about horse racing. We've got Mendelssohn, $3 million, Good Magic, $1 million, and Still Regard over $1 million, and My Boy Jack for $20,000, guys.
Yeah, and my boy Jack, he ran 2 starts back. It ran 6 weeks ago in the Louisiana Derby. Noble Indy, Lone Sailor, training up to the race from that. Keith DeSormo ran him back in the Lexington Stakes because he was worried about points and getting into the field. So with him having a race 3 weeks ago, he's not doing as much as other horses are out on the track. I think he's looked great physically. It's just a matter, like Travis said earlier, if he's fast enough, Brandon.
Yeah, and you can just tell by his physical stature out there, the distance is not going to be a problem with him. Obviously, he's got the closing one-run style, but a lot of leg on this horse, and definitely one that can get in the mix late. And we said, stamina's not going to be an issue. And a guy like Keith DeSormo, he's got a plan, and that's what you like to see. We had him on the show a few days ago. He said he had kind of babied the horse a little bit out of the race and going into the race. So you like to see that a trainer like that has a plan. He's got experience. He finished second in this race a few years ago. So My Boy Jack is coming in and could be a sleeper to hit the board at a big price.
Brandon, I want to ask you about Combatant as he leaves the track, and we see his half-mile workout time of 49.60, which is 49 3/5. What are you looking for after a horse completes their workout? Like, as far as mannerisms go, like how they're acting after the work. Is that anything that you pay attention to?
Yeah, you want to watch them after the work when they go on to the backside and how they pull up. You want to just see that everything looks fluid, and you can see here he's walking off and, kind of tossing, like he's almost playing a little bit. Like that didn't really take a lot out of him. He's kind of, he knows now he's headed back to the barn, and a lot of the time they don't want to go back. They want to stay out on the track and have a little fun. So this is what you like to see. You just like to see a little bit of pep in the step. The head's up and the ears are up, and just like that he's telling you that, hey, if you need me to do something else, I can.
Brandon, a follow-up question for you from Kelly on Facebook. Are the beefy horses faster than the leaner horses? What can you tell by a horse's body type as to what kind of horse they can be? Sprinter, router, mile and a quarter, turf? How important is body type?
I think it's a little important. You guys talked about pedigree earlier, and the fact that, horses outrun the pedigree, and you might have a sire that's a sprint-based sire or typically produces sprint runners, and he gets a router. I mean, that happens all the time. So it's a case-by-case scenario, and some horses that do carry a little more weight, yeah, they might want to run further, but some horses like a My Boy Jack, who doesn't, in my opinion, carry the biggest weight ever, obviously he wants to go as long as possible. So it's a case-by-case scenario, and you just have to look at the horse as an individual.
All right, so we're going to take some more social media questions. Travis, I'm going to ask you one from Dawn on Facebook. I think this is Steve Coburn with an alias, okay? The question is, will they ever make a ruling that a horse can't run in the Preakness and the Belmont if they don't run in the Kentucky Derby?
It's a tremendous question, and I think the answer is no. I don't think that rule's ever going to come around.
I mean, explain that. I mean, obviously, okay, so we're running the Kentucky Derby. There are going to be fresh horses, Quip, et cetera, that are waiting for the Preakness. That's why it's so hard to win the Triple Crown, because you're running against Derby horses. Then there's fresh horses in the Preakness. Then there's fresh horses in the Belmont. And that's what happened to California Chrome. And that's why this question was brought up initially. But explain the whole process, because, you know, you got to earn your way into the Derby, but you don't have to earn your way into the Preakness or Belmont.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could get shuffled back in terms of, you know, whatever their qualification criteria is for getting into the Preakness. But at the end of the day, the Triple Crown's the Triple Crown for a reason. It's not supposed to be easy. And the reason why the list of horses that have done it are so great is because it's hard to do. You know, I hear you on California Chrome. Unfortunately, just wasn't good enough. But American Pharoah was, you know, a couple years later. So I think it boils down to the fact you just got to have the right horse. Everything has to go your way. Not only do you have to have a good 2-year-old and 3-year-old season to get into the race like the Kentucky Derby and then win the Derby, you have to also maintain that form for the entire 5-week stretch of the Triple Crown. Hard to do.
There's a man that's gotten it right on Kentucky Derby Day 4 times, Dwayne Lucas. At the age of 82, Scott, he's still out there on the pony. He's got Bravazo in this year's Kentucky Derby. He's a great spokesman for the game. He holds court. Everybody wants to hear what Dwayne has to say.
Yeah, it's great to see him back on horseback at this age. Like Travis said, I haven't been on horseback since the circus of some sort. But what a great ambassador for the game. Really changed the game with the way he approached training. It's great to see him out there, Joe.
All right, so the Derby and Oaks training period is coming to a close. We'll have hundreds of more horses training during the course of the morning, and a lot of important stakes to be run over the course of the next week here at Churchill Downs. We will race on Tuesday, Wednesday, Derby, Oaks Friday, and Kentucky Derby Saturday. And I want to send it back up to Brandon and James high atop Churchill Downs. Just tell us what your thoughts were on the day, a little bit about the combatant work, anybody else who impressed you in their gallops here this morning.
Yeah, Brandon, tell us what did you think about Combatant's move?
Yeah, I thought it was exactly what the barn wanted, and you hear that all the time, but it really was. And he was moving well. The years were up. You could just tell you want them to want to do a little more, and that's exactly what we saw from Combatant there. Vino Rosso was very interesting to me out there. He had a great coat. Really liked the way that he reaches out up front. But being by Curlin, I mean, he's only going to get better with age, you would think. And he was one that impressed today. Magnum Moon looked well out there. Really, all the Pletchers were moving okay out there. And I like the fact, too, that Travis mentioned Noble Indy as a long shot because he's one of mine as well, Joe.
And I'll also ask you, Brandon, we got a big day ahead tomorrow with Justify, expected to be on the track with others. What are you going to be looking for from those horses?
Yeah, let's just talk about the setup for the rest of the weekend here. So the majority of the work is done. Combatant was really the last worker we're going to see. And so these gallops coming into the race, this is another reason you want to tune back in. The gallops going into the race are very important in here. And they're going to be telling us which horses are ready to do more and are thriving going into the race, and maybe which ones, are kind of getting a little more tired. You know, this Derby trail, it's a big grind, guys, and they've been basically from their 2-year-old season last summer going at it, and they've got a little bit of freshening maybe this winter, but it's a grind. You take a horse like Bolt d'Oro that we're going to see. He's had 2 tough races in here. He ran a big race in his second start, and it's one of those things where these gallops, they're still very important. They're more important for us as handicappers and analysts because the horses will tell us which ones are ready to run big races, and like I said, which ones that maybe are starting to tail off.
All right, good stuff. Back to you, Joe.
The Derby arrivals you just saw on your screen, headlined by Justify and Mendelssohn. And guys, we're going to get to see Justify before we're going to get to see Mendelssohn. Travis, I just want to ask you about Mendelssohn, your thoughts on him, and the fact that we don't get to see him. He's going to arrive later today. I think I heard like 5:30, but then there's a quarantine period because he's coming in from overseas.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not going to see him till Thursday, right? That would be the first day he can come to the track. Went back and watched his Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf the other day. Boy, he's had a pretty good trip in there, didn't he? Right, nice pocket trip down inside.
And a key race.
And it's been a very key race.
Yeah.
It's been a very live race. You go back and you watch the UAE Derby. That's been a racetrack all spring long, for our spring anyway, over in Dubai, that favored horses on the lead and horses down inside. And obviously he won by 18.5 lengths. I'm not going to take anything away from him in that regard. Andy Beyer, who makes Beyer Speed Figures, there was enough data there. He felt to go ahead and give the horse a 106 Beyer, which makes him one of the fastest, if not the fastest horse in the race in many circles. But I don't think he's going to offer the right price if you're handicapping him, because I think he's going to get overbet. I think this is the type of horse that people just want to have the wise guy over. The first horse to come from Dubai to win the Kentucky Derby, they want to have him. He certainly has the talent. I'm not going to be surprised. The other thing for Mendelssohn is he was forwardly placed in that race, but he's going to face Kentucky Derby speed on Saturday, and Promises Fulfilled, I believe, is faster than him early. So he's going to have to settle off the pace, work out a trip from there. Certainly has a shot, though.
Judy from Facebook asked that question. She also followed up, and I'm going to ask James this. James, do horses get any work in while they're in quarantine? How does the quarantine process work? He's coming in from overseas. He's not going to get here till 5:30 at night. 48-hour quarantine period. Is that detrimental, do you think, at all?
Well, it's not detrimental for the O'Brien horses. I mean, this is his routine. He ships in at the last moment. They'll definitely exercise around the barn, Brandon. They'll be walked, and they also sometimes have a special training session for horses in quarantine where they can come out and jog around the track. That won't be during the morning sessions, but we'll see him like we said on Thursday. But no, not a big concern. Aidan O'Brien ships worldwide. He gets there at the last possible moment and wins big races. So yeah, I'm not worried at all about the trip. Part of the schedule.
Brandon, I got a question for you from Jane on Facebook. She wants to know who those other horses are out there, the horses that aren't training, the horses aren't necessarily race horses, but we see lots of other horses. What is their job?
Yeah, so we've got lead ponies for each trainer. Sometimes the trainers will just sit on the backside and watch. Others like to get on a horse. They could like to get on their pony and come out and walk the horse out. You've also got, horses have different minds and personalities just like humans. So you've got some that when they hit the track, they're a little hard to handle. So having a lead pony out there to kind of lead the way, an older horse that's more mature and kind of show them the ropes a little bit. You see that especially with 2-year-olds because right now it's an exciting time at the track because the babies are hitting the track, the 2-year-olds. And then you've also got outriders out here. They're kind of like the security guards. You'll see them in the red jackets, and you mentioned this earlier, earlier in the week that we have some of the best outriders out here, Joe.
Yeah, the outrider's job is to catch a loose horse, and it happens on occasion, not only during training, Travis, but during the course of the racing day as well. And the three of us, as far as our experience on horseback, very, very minimal or next to minimal. When we see what those guys do, it's very impressive.
There was a horse our first year here, 2015, that broke through the gate before the race on turf and was in a full-out drive for about 1/8 of a mile. And the outrider, who's not sitting in a jockey saddle, sitting in a more conventional saddle, got on his horse, took off after him, and caught him. That's what they have to do. They are some of the most astute and skilled horsemen on the grounds, and they do a great job.
All right, let's see if we can find any more social media questions here. This is a question for you, Scott. And when we're handicappers, we try to figure out what a horse does best. That's what a trainer's job does too, but we need to find the winner in every race. How do you decide which horses run on turf and which horses run on dirt? And I think it's a trainer question, but it's also a handicapper question when you're looking at any individual race.
Yeah, to try to differentiate that first, I'm always a trainer first guy. Is this guy training better on turf, dirt? Can he make that move? Also, I'm not a big pedigree guy like Travis said, but when it comes to surfaces, I do care. If a horse has certain pedigree, I will move them up on the turf in their first time over. That's one way I will use that.
It's Monday of Derby week. That means it's Oaks Draw Day, the draw for the Derbies tomorrow, Tuesday. Let's take a look at the particulars. We're going to draw the Kentucky Oaks today. We're going to draw the Kentucky Oaks card today. So past performances for the entire card will be available later on in the day. You can dig into those. It's going to be really fun. 10:45 in the morning for the Oaks broadcast. You can watch it wherever you're watching this show, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, KentuckyDerby.com/Oaks. The program begins at 10:45 in the morning. Then on Tuesday, we've got the Kentucky Derby draw, much of the same. It's presented by Ram. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 10:45 a.m. Again, you can watch the Kentucky Derby draw. All 20 horses will have post positions, and all the speculation as to how the trips will play out will really begin. All right, so final thoughts. Travis, we're Monday of Derby week. We got to see all these people back here today. The draw for the Oaks today, the draw for the Derby tomorrow. It's getting real, my man.
It is. You pull onto the backstretch this morning. There's just a buzz in the air. The crowd is here. Things are heating up. Back racing tomorrow. Once you get back into the racing mode, things really pick up quickly. We bang our way through the week and get to Friday and Saturday. It's going to be a great race this year. It truly is. When you look back at the last 20 Derbies, I think you can put this in the top 5 in terms of depth of field and maybe even in the 1 or 2 spot as well.
Yeah, I've been telling people, when you look back at this chart 5-10 years from now, and you see the quality of the horses and their racing careers and then the stallion prospects, it's something to behold. Scott, you're handicapping, man. You're looking at these races. You're arguing amongst yourself about who you like, who you don't like, who's moved up your list based on the workouts. How does your final handicapping work over the next couple of days before you make your final decisions?
Yeah, I think it's about time to try to block out as much noise as possible. I do like to listen in the weeks coming up to the race, but now we're 4 or 5 days out. More people are chattering. I think it's key. Block out the noise. We've known these horses for a long time, but seeing how they come into Churchill, how they react when they get here is going to be one thing I'm looking for. And other than that, like I said, just trying to stick to my opinions that I've come up with and not getting overturned by the chatter.
Back to James and Brandon. I want to know how you guys balance everything. What you've seen on paper from the prep races, and especially Brandon, what you've seen from the training, and especially for James, pedigrees and all these extra stats that you have. How do you balance everything and come up with your final decisions and your final wagers?
Well, this is crunch time. I mean, it's time to be getting busy doing that work, Joe. It's tough this year, like you guys were saying. I mean, it's such a good group of horses. Audible's a perfect example. I think he would have been favored in 2 of the last 5 Kentucky Derbies. He's going to be the 4th or 5th choice in the wagering, Brandon.
Yeah, and for me, it's I like to use the visual interpretations along with what I see on paper, and I think it's about finding your strengths. And for everybody out there, there's such great access to the videos on all the websites we have, KentuckyDerby.com. Go through and look and get to know these horses a little bit, and then continue to watch our videos and see how they're doing leading up into the race. Because like I talked about, horses can really tout themselves and show you that they're ready to run a big race.
Oaks draw today, Kentucky Derby draw tomorrow. Not only those races, but the full cards. We're going to be feasting on stakes under the Twin Spires, highlighted by the Oaks on Friday and the Kentucky Derby on Saturday. On behalf of Travis Stone, Scott Shapiro, James Scully, and Brandon Staubel, have a great rest of the day.